Nicholas, good morning. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. What about you, Matt?
I'm good. Nicholas, I know you've been doing a lot of traveling. The weather it seems to be breaking here on the East Coast a little bit. It's going to be over 50 degrees this weekend. QVC had their first 24-hour home and garden event. Do you do anything, any kind of planting or gardening around your house?
Tell me about it. So it's super hot here in Atlanta, and my wife the other day asked me to go to Home Depot and buy a bunch of flowers, which I did. And guess what? The flowers are still in the garage waiting to be planted. So we've got plenty of flowers now. They just need to go to the next step. So I think maybe there's a service from Depot to go and plant the flowers as well. They should sell that.
That's a typical husband move. I so appreciate it.
All right, let's jump in. Hello and welcome, everyone. This is another episode of the VCommerce Show, the show that gets you the top news of VCommerce, the video commerce space, the space we both, Matt and I, love so much. I'm Nicholas, your host with eStreamly, the company that gets you live stream and video commerce on your website, social media. And I have the delightful pleasure to have the wonderful co-host, Matt from E6 Marketing, the company that gets you on QVC. How are you, Matt? How is your day doing?
Excellent. Looking forward to the weekend. But everything's going well.
So tell us about the show.
Yeah. This is called the VCommerce Show. This is we're still babies as far as the podcast world goes, as far as the VCommerce Show is. But this is basically a show highlighting video commerce, things that started with direct infomercials to QVC and HSN, now through digital streaming and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook Lives and all those things. We cover a couple of the topics, the hot topics of the week. Hopefully you'll learn something a little new. Hopefully you'll laugh a little bit and be informed a little bit and definitely have some fun. So I know this is a special episode, Nicholas.
It is a special
we got
episode.
A great opportunity to talk to an expert in the retail field.
Absolutely. We have with us Beth. Beth is a person that I met at NRF, actually. And Beth Moriarty, she's this tech expert. She's this marketer expert in the retail and the tech industry. She has been helping many brands as well as many tech leaders to navigate the crowd and get the word out there. So how are you doing, Beth? I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm doing great. And thank you guys for including me. This is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for today, big episode, what we want to do is obviously go over the top news of the week, but we wanted to make it special because the three of us had a chance to go over NRF. And so we want to take maybe the last second part of the show to really talk about NRF and what we saw, what we didn't saw, and how that relate to the news flow. So yeah, why don't we kick it off, Matt?
Yeah, Beth, I am so excited for you to be here. We talked about it on last week's podcast. The show was a little overwhelming. It was my first time at NRF, so I'm hoping you could help summarize things and simplify things and kind of help us understand where the direction and where retail is moving. But before we get into that, my hot topic, and again, this is something we've talked about on the VCommerce show before, but the beauty industry is an innovative one, and they're always trying to stay one up on the consumer and trying to capture her in the best light, trying to give her what she wants and where she wants it. So the news this week was about JCPenney getting into the TikTok world and them implementing the social media dynamic into their platform. And they've got JCPenney Beauty now, and it's a segmented part of their retail space, but they're really putting both feet into the VCommerce dynamic with TikTok and influencers and all of that thing. I read a $1 billion reinvestment plan is being instituted with JCPenney this year, specifically in the beauty space. Their dynamic is no different than any other live streaming brand. Find unique products, find independent products, indie brands, and give their customers something unique. So, Nicholas, we've talked about beauty before. We've talked about Ulta and Sephora. What do you think about JCPenney now jumping into this arena?
I think it's fascinating. What really amazed me the most in this story, to be frank with you, is by having kind of tailored the brand and created brand that are not on Sephora, that are not on Ulta. They went with the indie brands, and those indie brands, where are they? They are all on TikTok. They are the one that make the noise. They are the one that have the follower, the crazy following. They are the one that are trying to get that extra visibility because they don't have the distribution footprint that those other brands have. So they have this energy that and guess what? What the article is saying is that, well, all those creators, they get excited and now they come to the store to actually create picture and talk about it. This is free UGC. This is like, I think I just found it so fascinating. And we have to remember that JCPenney was in trouble until recently. Are they still in trouble? I don't know. I haven't seen their last earnings, but I would be very curious to see if that is the revival, leveraging, influencer marketing in some way to get there. I found it fascinating.
Doesn't this kind of remind you of our conversation about Stanley and the mugs and like the reinvention of Stanley? This is a very similar thing. JCPenney is a Gen Z or baby boomer brand. My mother took me into JCPenney probably when I was young to get my jeans and shirts and shoes and things like that. Now this younger generation is getting reintroduced. So I love the dynamic of these established companies kind of reinventing themselves, being not being one for all and all for one kind of thing, but specifically going, charging towards the consumer that they want to engage with.
Yeah, in this new world of virality, getting into with younger audience that create that buzz, I think is fascinating. Beth, tell us you have a Stanley too, right? Do you?
Of course.
Oh, okay, of course. Okay, all right. We all have Stanley stories.
Absolutely.
So. That's awesome. Well, for the second news of the week, I wanted to talk about something that we talked before, more on a macroeconomic space. Dimension. I'm sure everyone has seen the last GDP numbers coming up, and if you don't, they are pretty astonishing. Well, people, the Wall Street and all the consensus out there was that GDP for Q4 was going to be around 2%. The number actually that was published yesterday is 3.3%. That is, that's not like a 0.1% difference. This is like 1.3% difference compared to, so over 50-60% difference over what people were expecting. This is a pretty big numbers. I found it very fascinating. The other thing that I found fascinating in this story was, so I'm actually, I love trading. I mean, I'm not a trader, but I just love to be around traders, and I follow a bunch of them, and I listen to podcasts of traders. And there was a trader specifically I'm following. He's like following one specific metric. He wanted to understand is the GDP growth coming from inflation, or is it coming from actual purchase? And guess what? What he was saying is that actually that growth is not coming from inflation. So that's what's kind of surprised me, because on the other side, we were at NRF last week, and everyone is saying the same thing. Where is growth? Where is buying power? Like, at least on the software industry, people are all the same. Like everyone is trying to move upstream. We talked about this. So that's very fascinating. The other piece that I want to mention is that, talking about that recession piece, the jobless claim, where it came a little higher than expected. So people are laying off more folks than they, and the trend is on the upside. So again, we see growth, we see layoff. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention, which is not probably going to help inflation, not inflation, but like the rate, the credit rate, is the core CPI was published this morning. It was expected to be at 3%. It's actually 2.9%. So what does it mean? We have lower, and we know that the CPI is something that the Powell family and all those people out there, the Fed, are looking very aggressively. That's the number that they always reference. And the fact that it's at 2.9, what does it mean? It means that, well, growth is here. the CPI inflation is lower than expected. Why would we lower interest rates? right? I mean, like there's no need to lower interest rate. We still not at 2%. So I wonder, people were pricing a 6 point reduction, a 6 point reduction of the interest rate for this year. I wonder how that's going to be playing out, and because that has a big cost on inventory as well. I don't know. I just found this whole economic dimension very fascinating. It feels like there's two words out there. I don't know what you think on that, Bess or Matt, but just a fascinating story to me.
Yeah, well, the political year, that dynamic, normally they don't mess with the interest rates. This count, the political year. I was reading this morning about the fourth quarter being so strong, and the reaction of what the fourth quarter will bring. 200 million shopped online, 200 million people online or in stores over a Black Friday 5-day weekend. And I think that's the weekend that Beth was with us. 200 million shopped that weekend, either online or in stores. Average spend over $300 per consumer. So the reaction of like, okay, fourth quarter was great, Q4 was great, led off by the Black Friday weekend. What happens in January? Nicholas, I think this is I think it's obviously too early to tell, even though we're at the end of the month right now. But with the easy pay dynamic and people postponing payment, that dynamic, you're not going to figure out. You're going to have to go by quarter. You can't go month by month if the consumer is not going to pay their fourth quarter bills until February or March or even later. So It's going to be an interesting dynamic. I'm used to that easy pay dynamic in my world. It's newer in the retail space, but it has to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, and before we jump into NRF, I'd love to make one last comment. Is that we had on the podcast the CEO, Phoebe Yu, the CEO of Attitude, which is a brand that is operating in Australia as well as in the US. And what she was telling, which kind of shocked me, I don't know if you heard about Dry January, but I personally do Dry January. But she was saying like this movement is expanding to consumption as well. And she was seeing that on her sales, like people not consuming and her consumers telling her, we are waiting February to actually start consuming again,
Really?
which I found very interesting. I was like, whoa, that's the first time. So I don't know if it like she had a very specific subset of customer because they are very eco-friendly, very sustainable, or if it's really a movement out there. And if, in 5-10 years from now, we will have Dry January, which is dry to everything. I just found that dynamic very interesting. Just want to share.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. But I could see that. We're all recovering from the hangover of our spending over Christmas, right? And in making those types of decisions. It is interesting when you were talking about the interest rates as well, because so many of the startup and growth stage retail tech companies are looking for VC funding, and it's directly impacted by these current rates and some of these challenges. So really excited to see that the GDP increase, because there's hope there that some of these things are going to start turning in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of tech and marketing, so what was your take on NRF actually? What are the things that really pop you and say, wow, this is super interesting? We were, the three of us were here, and so I'd love to hear your thought on NRF altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. While I was there, I had an opportunity to talk with brands, several different e-com digital experts that are now doing their own consulting practices, as well as a bunch of startups and tech companies. So I had a really broad, conversations across several different avenues. I think one of the biggest things that I see is in the past, historically at NRF, it was predominantly mostly in-store technologies, supply chain, warehouse, packaging. And this time, this year, there was a real emphasis on digital and e-com, and I loved it. It was all mixed together. You still had this real broad knowledge, but, there was definitely a change. Of course, it would be going, you have to mention the elephant in the room, and that is AI, right? Every single technology has some angle on AI, and you could say, are we over indexing on AI, or are we actually under indexing? Because it really should be in every single technology. But with that being said, I would say the biggest thing that I was hearing from the brands directly is it's really hard to figure out which AI is real. What's the exact use case that's going to help me increase the revenue on my site? How is this going to be used in a way that either my brand gets more loyalty, I get more revenue? How is this all being tied together? Do I need to have AI in every single technology that I use? So I think, we've heard a lot about AI, and, there's most tech companies that have AI focus are the ones getting the funding, that are, doing well in the market. So, there's a lot to be said about that as well.
Beth,
I
what
don't
I
know what
learned,
the AI side, but I would say, this, and then I would say the regulations are one of the bigger issues that we're going to start facing with AI, that it's really not caught up to us yet. And, soon it will be, how we're going to keep this secure, and how are we using this in the right way.
completely unknown, the AI dynamic with what it's going to mean to retail. No one knows. And I think I read 6,200 brands showcased at NRF this year. And how many brands will be back next year? Because you mentioned it, like everyone's got a little angle on the AI kind of dynamic, but what's going to catch traction, and what's going to grab the retailer's attention, and what's it going to mean to them? What I took out of all that is, which I've always valued in what I do through VideoCommerce, is analytics. Like AI is analytics, and that's the simplest way I could wrap it around my brain. You have to figure out what the consumer wants, where she is or he is, what they need, how they move, how they spend, and AI is just it's just another form of grabbing customer data to kind of centralize it, so then you could market directly to who your consumer is. That being said, I love it. Like, I love that kind of thing. If we could narrow it down, if it'd be like kind of a science project, like this is how you win by using this analytics to gain that traction. But I don't think it's that simple. It's so involved. I said last week, I was kind of blown away by all the tech. I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know which direction to go or trust. It was very interesting.
I'd love for you, Beth, to chime on this specific. Personally, so I was also there, spoke to a lot of brands and retailers, and I was constantly asking, so what are you coming here for? And first of all, everyone was saying the same thing. Like, there's no one booth out there that doesn't say they do some sort of AI somehow, somewhat. Yeah. And then the second thing was, people were not coming for AI. They were coming here like, hey, last year and the year before, supply chain were all broken and everything. Now we have supply chain under control. We got to figure out planning. We got to have planning back on order. So people were coming for planning and planning tools. And the other thing that I found very interesting is robotics, right? We can't get our workers to work, or we can't get enough workers to actually fulfill what we need. And we are here to robotics. What really surprised me is there was a guy who say, I have a mandate from my CEO ready to spend a lot of million on robotic, and I'm actually shopping on the booth. Like, I'm gonna say like shopping, say, oh yeah, I'm shopping. What I found it very interesting, right? I mean, maybe it's my first exposure to someone saying that so upfront, but the guy was here and was willing and knew that by the end of the year, it's gonna spend like X amount of million on robotics because they don't want to. So I found it like, last year, I felt that NRF, what people were presenting and what people were talking about, like from a walk versus booth, was relatively aligned. This year, I felt there was a really significant disconnect between what people wanted to were coming for and what people were talking about. Curious to hear your thought there. Am I dreaming this, or did you feel the same way?
Well, I didn't, but I don't know if that's because I am more focused on e-com, so my conversations were in that area. But what I would say is it actually goes back to what I was saying about historically, it was much more in-store in the packaging. And so, and warehouse and logistics and supply chain. So a lot of the attendees from brands are going to be those that are running those parts of the operations in store, their warehouses, right? And so it'd be interesting that that's more what they're looking for. I think one of the things that you said, though, that does really resonate with me is, brands are ready to start spending on innovation now. For the last year, they've sort of been like a wait and see. I don't know, like, I'm really interested in this. I'm going to wait another quarter. Right? And deals have been, pushed because of that. And then how do the brands want to make the right decision? So I think what's really great here is we are seeing, they're ready, and I'm happy to hear it. They're ready to really start innovating again. And I'm excited because of all these different opportunities that are out there in order for them to innovate. I think that the hard part, as I was mentioning, is trying to figure out what that right thing is. I love someone who knows so directly. It's like they probably run a warehouse, or they run, a part of the store operation that can be moved to robotics, and so they're able to really make that really strong decision. I think that's awesome when they already have that strategic direction, and I hope all the brands are starting to pull that together.
Yeah,
Nicolas, I'm sorry. You mentioned you actually sent me over to the food service tech area, and my company works a lot in food, and we work through supply chain, and we work through a lot of mom and pops, and we work with larger companies. And you mentioned robotics. They use the word automation.
Yes.
I think I saw a burger that they make in like 10 seconds, like a 10-second burger or some kind of craziness with that. And we talk about personalization and grabbing the consumer and all that kind of thing. We talk about quality and authenticity, and then they're making a burger that takes 10 seconds. I wouldn't go near that burger. You know what I mean? So, like, is the automation, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, it's a valid point, but at the end of the day, is that I think the question that most retailers are asking themselves, and tell me if you think that, Beth, but is it better not to have any burger because we can't find a worker, or to have a burger that is made by a machine, right? I think that's kind of what the rubber eat the road, right? Or I don't know if that expression.
Yeah, and I think that goes right to their brand identity. Are you a luxury brand? Are you full service? Are you fast fashion, fast food? Then you're going to make very different decisions based off of that, on what level of interaction that you need to have very directly.
Yeah.
And how to facilitate that, right? Like, how can the technology facilitate that in some scenarios you're doing fast, and in some scenarios, you're doing the personal touch. And I think that's where brands really win, is when they can combine the two.
And I think that's where AI will be powerful also, right? This ability to understand at what point they need to be fast, at what point they need to, figure it out, like, hey, you need to bring the human touch on by XYZ thing. So I think that's also some area for there. We are already at time. Well, that's been a fantastic conversation, Beth. If people wants to find you, I know you're on LinkedIn, but is there any way for people to continue the conversation with you on about NRF, or any other conversation about marketing, retail marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I can, throw in on a comment my contact information. I have office hours 3 days a week. If anyone's interested in just having a conversation, I'm really up for it and excited to talk to you.
Awesome. And Mas, any special shout out for you this week, or?
Well, we're late in January, but we mentioned the gardening at the beginning of the show. QVC had their first 24-hour home and garden event this past week. So they were selling live plants. They were selling garden products all over the place. They want people to be happy and to be thinking about warmer weather. Although here on the Northeast, it's going to get like some kind of disgusting 50 degrees and rainy over the weekend. But I'm looking forward to spring. Once QVC and other dynamics through Home Depot and Lowe's start bringing out the spring products, like, it kind of puts a smile on my face.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
My special shout out and for the week is additionally we launched this new UGC alert. So it's a weekly alert that you can subscribe. It's free, and you get a quick email from me actually telling you what is your top 5 UGC from Facebook, YouTube, Insta, and TikTok that are not your own brand. So someone talking about your brand as a video. It's super easy. I think it's great for anyone that wants to kind of get the pulse of what's up out there. People are talking about them, and you don't have the million tools out there available. That's a great way to learn about what's been going on your side. Well, it has been a fantastic show. Thank you, Bess, for coming.
Thanks
Matt,
for
as
having me.
usual, thank
Thank you,
you.
Matt.
And
Nicolas,
I
thank
guess
you.
we will see
Great,
you
guys.
again next Friday.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.